Hey guys, I'm Dorkk. This is going to be a video to show my Paladin's UI in WeakAuras. It's nothing too complicated. If you've seen any of my UIs before, this bar here above my player frame is a little different. It's mainly just I felt I needed tanking cooldowns and big cooldowns and stuff like that in a little more obvious spot. I felt I was missing some of it when it was down below the main cooldowns. Um, I just decided moving them up there. They seem to be more in my vision and maybe will change the outcome of certain deaths or dungeons sometimes. Um, I'll start by saying the bar in the middle right here is normally a resource bar, but for Paladins, since they don't really use a resource, it's Shield of the Righteous and Light of the Protector cooldowns. The bar below is your Consecration, Avenger Shield, Blessed Hammer, Judgment, Truth Guard, or Eye of Tier. Bar below, I would obviously not your defensives, but also still somewhat important cooldowns. There's Rebuke, Arcane Torrent, which will only show if you're a Blood Elf. If you're not a Blood Elf, I don't have it set up for that, but you can easily go in and change this to whatever your racial is. You will just have to go into load also and change player race to whatever your race is. It's pretty easy, not a big deal. So yeah, in this group, it's just Divine Steed, Hand of Justice, Hand of Freedom, Hand of Sack, which I don't think are called that anymore. Whatever. Cleanse, which isn't too important for a tank, but there's definitely dungeons when it comes in handy. One that comes to mind the most is Dark Heart Thicket. In the beginning on the spider ads, you can dispel the dot on there. I would just like to see the cooldown just in case. I have Bastion of Light, Aegis of Light, Repentance, and Blinding Light in here. I don't use any of those talents right now. Sometimes I use Repentance, sometimes I use Blinding Light. I don't usually use Bastion or Aegis though. I haven't really felt a need for Bastion, and Aegis kind of really has a very niche use to it that I have not ever needed. If you do happen to take a bunch of those talents, this bar is going to grow to be bigger than the center bar. It won't collide with any elements of the UI, but if you don't like how that looks, then you might have to figure out a different change for it. You could just put a different group, another set of auras below it to just put any of the overflow, but right now it's not a problem for me, so it's not a big deal. The active buffs are pretty simple. They're just any kind of buffs you might get. Sometimes I put trinket procs in here, but most of the time I've been putting trinket procs in this group over here that I'll display above the player frame and above your major cooldowns. But in the active buffs, you mainly will see like your major personals, your defensives, any kind of external cooldowns usually will pop up here. I would say it's pretty important for the tank to be able to see these things. It can depend on, like if you don't know you have a Guardian Spirit on you, you might pop something of your own, wasting a cooldown pretty much entirely. So you want to be able to see when these things are going on. So then in the cooldowns above my bar, the very basic cooldowns, just your Lay on Hands, Divine Shield, Blessing of Spell Warding, Blessing of Protection, Avenging Wrath, Guardian of Ancient Kings, and Ardent Defender. Just the basic ones. Right now you can see the bars extending further than the frame, but that won't ever happen because that's including Spell Warding and Blessing Protection, which you cannot have both. You can see the Shield of the Righteous group. I'll actually just show you how it looks, because right now you see the 3 bars. As you use Shield of the Righteous, each bar disappears. You can see it's recharging here, but if I use another one, it moves down, and another one, it moves down. Light of the Protector always stays in the same spot, because there's only one of it. As the bars recharge, they keep filling up that way. It mainly just replaces, because Paladins don't have a resource, Prot don't at least. There would be no point in showing mana there, it's not something you need to keep an eye on. If you happen to get the legendary helmet, where you have 2 charges of Light of Protector, currently this won't fill that, because I don't have the helmet. I haven't made anything to work with it. Right now the only fix I would say is maybe making it so this bar shows how many charges you have as well, because otherwise it'll only show the cooldown. You'll never know how many charges are on it based on this bar here. Um, in the trinkets and procs, you just have very simply a GCD bar because the WeakAuras don't show the GCD sweep, and I would like to at least see sometimes what the GCD is. Overall, you can kind of play with knowing. You don't really need the sweep or this bar. You kind of get a feel for it, but it helps here and there. This just lets you know that you're in your consecration because it's very important. Lets you know how long you have on Shield of the Righteous. And then these are just a bunch of different trinkets or procs or spells. The Dark Moon deck one, not everyone's going to be using that. It obviously only triggers if you have the buff. You can disable it, change it to a different one. If you have it, I'll explain quickly. Rather than making many different auras for the different Dark Moon buffs, I just used full scan and made sure the aura name contains of immortality, because every instance of the Dark Moon deck will contain that. And then I just used tooltip size instead of using stacks, because that'll just tell me how much armor the buff is worth, rather than telling me any other information, which, because there's no progress for it to show me or anything like that, or like duration rather. And then I just have Nightmariker. Again, this shows you the tooltip size instead of the stacks. It's the Bulwark of Order, uh, usually the second golden you go for, I believe, in your weapon. You gain a shield based on the damage your Avenger shield does. Uh, I would say not incredibly important to see how much you have, but sometimes helpful to see if you have a little bit of shield. Your Avenging Wrath buff, pretty simple. And so for most of these, you can move them around pretty easily. You can see the Dark Moon deck being the first in the group, like bottom right corner. Is 175 X offset and 400 Y offset. If you wanted to move it, the Ichor being next to it, you only have to add 50. That's one slot over from it. The Avenging Wrath being one slot above it, you just have to add 50. It's pretty easy moving them around. Changing them is pretty simple too. You can just change aura names, stuff like that. That's all you have to do really. These look a little more complicated. They're essentially the same. They just have more information you can input, but I don't input. The only difference is I use this button for the size instead of stacks. But overall, it's pretty much the same thing. For the Seraphim, I don't currently run Seraphim, but in case someone did and maybe wanted something for it, I figured that would be the best place to fit it into the UI, but you might want to move it from the position that it's in, maybe to the bottom right. Might look better there than where it is now. So it shows you, if you have the buff, it shows you how long the buff is. When you don't have the buff, it shows you the cooldown. So like right now I have the buff, you can see it. If I right click it off, now you can see the cooldown. Pretty simple. I don't know if you want to move it somewhere else, maybe more obvious. Move it in that group. It's just, I currently don't use it. I just figured I'd set you up with the aura in case you did want to use it. Other than that, I think that's basically all the auras. If you like the UI, feel free to use it. I'll include the script for the Elvui profile as well. Obviously right now with the Elvui, it's only the player and the target frames, but the WeakAuras are pretty much built around it, so you might want to use them as well. You can kind of get away with not using it, like if you just wanted to freeform use these bars here, it would pretty much accomplish the same thing. You could just move this, you could move the protection cooldowns and just place them over the Shield of the Righteous or something if you just want a central like cooldown thing with your frames not included if you wanted the frame somewhere else. Not a big deal. Either way, I'll include all the strings for the WeakAuras and the string for the Elvui profile. Again, if you like the UI, we'll probably be making more or posting more for other classes. So if you wanted it for a different class, you might want to just keep an eye, maybe subscribe. Right now, I plan to make one for my warrior for 7.1.5. I need to make one for my hunter The UI is pretty much there. I just need to make some adjustments and then make a video for it. Druid, I don't know if I made any changes for the patch. It's not much has changed with Guardian. Maybe add some stuff in case other people want to run different talents, because right now I've been running the same talents constantly though. And I just finished leveling a Demon Hunter, so I will probably be making a Demon Hunter setup soon. If you have any of those classes and want to see those, I would say keep an eye out because I will be making them very soon. And if you have other classes, I will make them eventually because I plan to level all the classes. But basically a matter of when I will make those because that's a lot of leveling to do. And I've been working a lot on the 4 or 5 main tunes that I've had already, so I don't really want to work on more. It's a lot of work doing Mythic Plus every week. But I will get to it eventually. I would say probably most likely next would be Monk, maybe Death Knight. I do want to try Shadow Priest, so that's a strong maybe that I will make something for that. Again, if you want any of those, just keep an eye out. I will get to them. Thanks for watching.